today we are here with Mary Grimes, who is with American Cruise Lines. She is a veteran in the travel industry who began her career as a travel agent in Colorado. She considers herself to be a military brat. She was born in Germany, where at the time her father was stationed in the Air Force. And over the years, she has been fortunate to be able to travel the world. So, Mary, how are you this morning?
I'm great this morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I do appreciate it. I know you've been doing a lot of traveling lately. So if you could maybe just tell a little bit about what it is that you do for American Cruise Lines and a little bit about what your company is.
Okay, well, I am the business development manager for the Southwest. And what that basically means, if anybody's familiar with sales, I am outside sales. So I am field sales representative. I work with our travel agent community. I tell everybody about American Cruise Lines and hopefully to get them to promote and to sell our great cruises. American Cruise Lines has been in business for 30 years. They started on the East Coast and have expanded all across the country. And that means the entire Maine coast. That means up in the Pacific Northwest and Alaska, and of course, the entire Mississippi River.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what it is that you could do on the cruises, the excursions, and what the ships are like?
Absolutely. Well, let me talk first about how we get people around on the cruises, and that would mean our ships. What's important to know about anybody who cruises within the United States is that we are American owned, we are American built in our own Chesapeake shipyard, we are American flagged, that means registered, and we are American crewed. So these are requirements called the Passenger Vessel Services Act that we follow, of course. So we have the largest fleet of anyone sailing river cruises, and we consist right now of 16 different ships in 3 different types of categories. I would say classes of ships, but types and categories really makes a little more sense. So of course, we have paddle wheelers, and we have paddle wheelers all along the Mississippi River, from St. Paul all the way down to New Orleans. We sail, and we have itineraries in between. Our number one is between New Orleans and Memphis, and that's known as the Lower Mississippi. That is the most popular. We also have paddle wheelers that sail in the Pacific Northwest. And our number 2 itinerary, which is along the Columbia and Snake Rivers. This is hugely popular, and we call it sailing along the footsteps of Lewis and Clark. And we also have paddle wheelers that sail on the Ohio River, and that is a lovely cruise between St. Louis and Pittsburgh. And people don't really think about that one.
No, they don't. I was surprised whenever I saw that. It was like, wow, you got that. It's really cool.
Yes,
My
exactly.
neck of the woods.
Yes, exactly. Then we have what we call our coastal ships. Now, these are especially built for American Cruise Lines, and others don't have this design. And this is what allows us to sail the East Coast. Now, everybody says there's not a river along the East Coast. No, there's not. So we sail along the coast, never out of sight of land, on small, stable ships from Portland, Maine, all the way down to Jacksonville, Florida. And in the background here, you can see the lighthouses that are in Maine. So there's nothing like Maine coast and harbors from the sea. So we sail New England, like the New England Islands. We sail down the Chesapeake Bay, and we sail between Jacksonville and Charleston, known as the Historic South. And that is probably our most popular itinerary in the Southeast. We can do that because our ships are small, between 100 passengers and 170, and they're very maneuverable, so we can get in places that big ships simply can't go. So really into little ports, into small bays and that kind of thing. And then last but not least, we have what we call our modern riverboat series. modern riverboats, totally unique to American Cruise Lines and more recognizable, I think, to people as a more like a ship design, but it's a riverboat. So it can go basically on all the rivers all along the Mississippi River, in the Columbia and Snake River as well. And so we have 6 of these beautiful ships that sail all up and down. So what you will see is history. So along the Mississippi River, a lot of it is Civil War as you're getting down into the lower Mississippi and also up into the Mississippi, upper Mississippi as well. But that's the Grand Heartland, and that's where Mark Twain grew up. So you visit Hannibal, Missouri, and you visit Dubuque. And on the lower Mississippi, you visit, of course, Memphis, and you visit New Orleans, but places in between like Baton Rouge and Vicksburg, up in the Columbia and Snake Rivers. Well, you're going between Portland, Oregon and Clarkston, Washington, and stopping in lovely places like Multnomah Falls, which no one can miss, of course, and Mount St. Helens, which is really interesting because there's a museum there that shows you what happened right after the eruption and what it looks like now. Really fascinating. And also Sacagawea National State Park is along the itinerary as well. So it's a lot about indigenous peoples. And Alaska, oh my goodness, yes. The Glacier Bay, Tracy Arm and the fjords, and visiting Ketchikan and Skagway and Haines and seeing all the wonderful scenery there and getting really close into the coastline, which big ships can't do. And along between Memphis and Nashville, that's our music cities. So you're going from the birthplace of blues and you're going over to country music capital of the world. Well, of course, you can't miss the Grand Ole Opry. And so you'll see that. There's stops along some of our cruises in Louisville. Well, what's there? Churchill Downs Museum, the Louisville Slugger Museum, and some distilleries along the way as well.
Those are nice. I like distilleries.
Exactly. So we have a myriad of experiences. It's just what kind of experience would you like to have? And that's what depends upon the type of ship you're on and the places in the country you're going to. Boston, Providence, Rhode Island, Newport, Rhode Island, Charleston, Savannah, the great rivers of Florida, where you visit St. Augustine, the oldest city in the United States. So that's kind of an example, but we have 35 itineraries across 31 different states. So take your pick.
When you go to Alaska, now, do you need to have a passport?
No, you do not. Alaska is within the United States. And the reason that you don't need to have a passport with us, well, of course, is we sail between U.S. cities, and we don't have to stop in Canada like bigger ships do because they are not registered in the United States. They are registered internationally because they sail the Caribbean and all of that. So we are able to sail between Seattle and Juneau on the Inside Passage, for example, and we are able to sail a round trip from Juneau, which they can't do.
Okay, well, awesome. And are you also in the Great Lakes region? And
we are not quite yet in the Great Lakes region, but because of a brand new type of ship that we are debuting, which is a catamaran style, which is only 109 passengers, and it is very small, it is very stable, and so maneuverable that it will get into places, different lakes, different rivers. And so I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of years to see us in the Great Lakes as well.
And that is available for cruising when?
2023 is when 2 of the ships will debut. We are planning to have 12 ships of this style, and it will debut in 2023 in July, and it will be sailing on the East Coast. So it will sail the main coast and harbors, and then further down into Chesapeake Bay and into the historic South in the intercoastal waterway, which our small coastal vessels right now don't do. So that's going to be very unique for us as well, and a hugely unique experience for our guests.
Okay, and you also did mention that you go down in Jacksonville. You
Yes.
also have some lakes or something around there that you go in. Can you explain
Uh-huh.
a little bit more about that?
Well, what I think is unique about our itineraries is that what we also do is a really nice 7 night cruise that's called the Great Rivers of Florida. But we do go into the Tamalata River and the St. Johns River as well. And along those places, we stop at Green Cove Springs, Fernandina Beach, and St. Augustine are some of the stops along the way. So that's a unique itinerary. And one nice thing about that is it can be sailed late into the year, just like the Historic South. In fact, the Historic South cruise, we have Christmas and New Year's cruises along that route as well.
When is the best time to travel for, say, the Mississippi River or the Colorado? When are the best times during the year?
Well, Columbia and Snake Rivers, I would say, because we basically start sailing those in, I think we already are going to be starting in April. And we sail that really through October, early November. Summer is absolutely gorgeous. It tends to be on the hotter side. So spring and also into the fall. The fall is lovely because you start getting the fall foliage along the Columbia River Gorge as well. So that's a lovely time to travel. If you're talking about along the Mississippi, it depends on which part of the Mississippi. So if you're in the upper Mississippi, well, you're starting from St. Paul and going to St. Louis. So I would say, late spring, and summer tends to be hot, but there's fall foliage in that part of the country as well. So sailing into September, late August into September is lovely. Now, what I would do is avoid the high summer months in the lower Mississippi. It really does get hot there.
Yeah.
So early spring, and then later into the year, we'll say late August, September, October is absolutely gorgeous there. But we do sail the lower Mississippi all the way in through Christmas time and after Christmas as well. And it will get cold. It's lovely, but it will get cold down there. So I would say, the early fall and springtime would be best for the lower Mississippi.
Okay. And what about along the coast? I know New England, you have the foliage that I know is beautiful up through that area.
Well, we have also a Hudson River fall foliage cruise, which is only September and October. So that gives you kind of a hint of a good time to go up in New England as well. We do not sail that later, the coastline in upper New England. We don't sail that really past September, October up in that area, and especially in the Maine coast. It's really far north. When we're going further south, we do sail like the Chesapeake Bay. We will sail into the fall. And we also have a colonial Christmas tour in that area as well. And it's focused on the American Revolution. So, I would say late spring, summer is lovely there because you're on the coast. And it's not going to be as hot. It may be hot in some of the ports. So that's why when we're moving further south, Charleston into Jacksonville, when you're traveling in the summer, remember you're stopping in the south. So it's going to be hot. So you might want to think about when you start. And a lot of our guests like to start when we first sail, which is in March, and go March, April, May, and maybe not as much in June and July because of the heat of the ports. And then again, later on into late summer and into fall as well. But remember also, since you're in the South, going into November, December it tends to be more mild as well. So it's really nice to sail later into the year.
Well, awesome. And now what about up in Alaska? When is a good time to go with there?
Well, we really sail, we start sailing about May. We do June, July, and August in Alaska. So we typically do not sail later into the year in Alaska. So, really summertime is lovely up there. It really is. So, really, if you want to go June, July, and into August, those are probably the most popular months. Some people travel a little bit earlier when we start, but that's fine. You're going to enjoy it any time. And remember, the weather is always changeable. in Alaska. But really, summer is gorgeous in Alaska as well.
Well, that's wonderful. And what about if people are wanting to see whales or see
Oh,
more
yeah.
of the wildlife? Is it
Well, of course, there's tremendous wildlife and gorgeous, gorgeous scenery in Alaska. But we also sail in the Northwest in the Puget Sound. And up there, you're talking about whale watching, you're talking about seals, you're talking about dolphins and in the winter up in there, as well as a myriad of birds that you can see up there as well. And the Puget Sound and the San Juan Islands is hugely historic. And so we go to Port Angeles, we go to Friday Harbor. So we go up in there. So there's a huge opportunity, if you go at the right time, to see whales. And the whales are basically going to be in some of the summer months as well, because that's where they are going to be migrating, and you'll be able to see them breach and in the feeding areas. So it's lovely.
well, wonderful? And can you tell us a little bit about um, the mood on the ships, like a little bit more about what is available on the ships, what
Mhm.
it's like to travel on it?
Well, you know, when you're with us, you're of course you're bringing your hotel with you, which is the nice thing. Most of our cruises average about 7 nights. We do have them all the way up to 21 nights on the if you'd like to go the entire Mississippi with us. Some are 10-night cruises as well. And one of the things about sailing with us is we have spacious accommodations. So when you're on one of our ships, let's say the modern riverboats, every one of the rooms, and I don't call them cabins, they are actual staterooms, have a private balcony with a sliding glass door. You know, you can easily fit a nice queen size bed in there. You have plenty of room. You have almost a full-size bathroom. So what you're doing is walking into really a hotel size room, which is fantastic because we like to spread out. We like to be comfortable in our rooms. And a lot of people will say, oh, I don't spend much time in there. Sure you do. I mean, let's think about it. Widescreen TV, if you want to go in and you want to take a little downtime, even though we have comfortable lounges on all of our ships, we have what we call midship lounges, like a small library or a game room where you can go and get some private time as well. And you never feel crowded on our ships because we never go even to 200 passengers. So you're never crowded on any of our ships. What we have on board, for example, we have warm cookie time in the afternoon. We have afternoon teas with piano playing in the background. There are onboard activities. For example, on a Christmas cruise, or right before Christmas, on board there was learning to make stained glass, gingerbread houses, and we had a competition for that. So there are various kinds of activities that are planned on board because not everybody gets off the ship during the day. But we do dock every day and we go into port. So there's a variety of things to go to do on board. We have complimentary cocktail hour and we have evening entertainment on board as well.
Awesome. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the entertainment that you have on board?
Sure. Entertainment with us, and remember, we are small ships, so we don't have like a big showroom and we don't have big productions. It is more local. So it can be focused on music, especially on our Music Cities cruise. It can be focused on music. There could be different types of performers, different types of musicians that are on board, but they are typically regional and they reflect where we're sailing through. So it could be Dixieland, it could be country music, it could be singers that come on board. And also, when we're talking about types of entertainment, or as we like to call it, enrichment, on every cruise, we also have experts in the areas that we are sailing. So we also offer the opportunity to attend a seminar and learn about the Columbia Snake River and the Lewis and Clark expedition, to learn about Civil War history. One of our cruises in the upper Mississippi has a gentleman who is in character as Mark Twain, and you can speak to him as if you were speaking to Mark Twain. So that's the kind of activity and entertainment that you can expect.
What kind of meals do you serve while you're on board ship?
We have excellent food. We have excellent cuisine. It's regional in nature, so it's inspired by where we're sailing through. Menus are always made to order. We don't have buffets aboard our ships, and there is more than one entree to choose from. So on the East Coast, for example, lots of lobster because it's Lobster Fest. When you go into the Mid-Atlantic in the Chesapeake Bay and into Baltimore and further down, we have Crab Fest. We even have an excursion where you can learn about the whole industry and have a lobster bake or crab fest. A true New England crab boil is all available there. In the lower Mississippi, we tend to do more of the traditional like gumbo, shrimp etouffee, which is really famous aboard our ships as well. And in Alaska, well, and in the Columbian Snake, there's going to be so much fresh salmon and other delicacies. Now, I'm mentioning a lot of fish, but of course, we have a lot in between as well. And because of our size on each vessel, we can accommodate any dietary restriction as well. So if someone's allergic to fish, well, for heaven's sake, we have lots of choices for them as well. If someone is gluten-free or has another restricted diet, we could easily accommodate that. And we provision locally. So we support the businesses and small suppliers that we sail through as well.
Can you also explain like excursions? What type of just examples of some of the excursions that I know that are free, and then there are some that you can also use as an add-on?
So in virtually every port, we have complimentary excursions. And the typical is a guided city tour. So you get a feel for where we're sailing or where we're, sailing through and where we've, and the city itself. So that really means that it is by coach and also is going to be narrated by an experienced guide. And also that may include some stops along the way. So that's kind of typical. It also could be a walking city tour. It could be some other type of activity. Like, for example, in Vicksburg, we have, there's a great city tour, but we also include what we call premium tours, which are optional. And they could be, like you said, it's an add-on. And they're very reasonably priced. And for example, like I was saying in Vicksburg, there's the Tombs and Tales. There is a woman from the from the local historical society that leads you through the cemetery and the different sections of the cemetery, who is buried there, Civil War colonels and generals, and then other sections of the cemetery, which is hugely historic. And that's one of the tours. Up in Alaska, it's a 45-minute flight seeing tour over the LeConte Glacier, for example. Or it would be a rafting adventure that goes through the Bald Eagle Preserve. In the Columbian Snake Rivers, we have a wonderful tour of Cape Disappointment. And that was a stop along the way for the Lewis and Clark expedition. And there's a wonderful visitor center there. Also in the South, in Baton Rouge, there is a swamp tour by pontoon boat, and the guides are extremely knowledgeable and very entertaining. These that I'm talking about, these types of tours, we offer tours in the morning and the afternoon. So basically, they can be from 2 to 3 hours as long. And so you could take your morning tour, come back for lunch, and then take your afternoon tour, and then be back in time for dinner. So lots of different options that you can have. The Grand Ole Opry up in Nashville, that's a complimentary tour. So here's some examples of the complimentary and the additional that you can see. Oh, and I can't forget Graceland. If people are Elvis fans, we have a wonderful full day tour with VIP access. into Graceland, and you get to see the museums with all the cars and the aircraft as well. You get to tour the grounds, and there's even a private cocktail hour in the jungle room. So that's something not to miss.
What is included?
Okay.
With the ships, like,
That is a terrific question, because people want to know, well, what am I paying for? And when I get on board the ship, what else am I paying for? Well, let me tell you, we are really virtually on and all inclusive. So with us, not only do you get the spacious accommodation, which are the largest in the industry, okay, of the cruise industry along the US rivers, you also get all of your meals, you get your cocktail reception, you get all of your beverages, you get 24-hour snacks as well. You will get complimentary excursions. The only thing is that you can add on, that would be an additional cost that you choose in advance, okay? And all gratuities are paid. So you get service, a very high level of personalized service without any expectations of a tip. So what I like to say to people is you can get on board and keep your hands in your pockets, because it truly is really all inclusive. We are the kind of cruise that doesn't have activities that you pay for on board. But I also will say that we don't do formal nights, and we don't have an onboard store or a spa. So people need to know that up front, that basically all of these things are available on shore.
I do want to thank you so much, Mary, for coming on and talking to us about the different cruises and what can be expected on board ship. So thank you so much, and you have yourself a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here.